Hello everyone, my name is Meghan LeVota and I offer wisdom, tools, and support for personality integration. And today I'm going to be discussing how ENFJs tend to feel like they're too much. I'm going to talk about my own struggles with feeling too much and a little bit about why this phenomenon happens to ENFJs. This is a real, I guess, sore spot for me. It's been something consistent in my life that I've always had, I guess, the fear about. The fear of being too much, the fear of taking up too much space, the fear of being like too obnoxious, too, I guess, loving. And I want to unpack that a little bit and explain why that happens, because I know that I'm not the only one that experiences that. Every time that I have shared something along these lines in the type community, it seems as though almost every ENFJ can relate to some level. And I think that it really has to do with our cognitive functions. And at the end of the video, I'm going to offer some advice if you are an ENFJ dealing with this. But I also just want to say that I think that for ENFJs, we tend to wear our heart on our sleeves and we can be very emotionally vulnerable and open. However, if we don't think that the mood of the room makes sense to share some sort of unpleasant emotion that's very private in us, it can take a lot to confide in people, because we don't want to be a burden, because that's another thing, is that we tend to feel like we are a burden when we do take up space. We prefer to move on when we think that an emotion has been solved. So we really don't like to dwell. We are not like NFPs in this way, in the sense where we don't really enjoy sitting with this uncomfortable emotion for long. We understand the emotions that are happening on this macro scale. We understand not just ours, but your emotions and how emotions are affecting all of us. We are almost looking at them like these little clouds passing by, but we don't like to attach to them. So yes, we understand these emotions, but I guess what I'm trying to say here is that it could take a lot for us to open up to someone on a deeper, more private level. And so if you have an ENFJ in your life and you're not sure really why they act the way that they do, there's a very good chance that the ENFJ that you know experiences this fear. And so let me know if this helped you understand them a little bit more. So I think I'm going to start with start talking personally, and then I'm going to unpack with the cognitive functions. So for me, when I was a kid, I ever since I was like 3 years old, I danced in the living room. I asked my parents to watch me dance. I wanted to be on camera. I would watch a TV show or a movie, but I would want to act it out, and I would want to get my family involved in playing the roles. I was kind of a lot. I had a lot of energy. I had a lot of questions I wanted to ask. I had a lot of things I wanted to do. I wanted to always tell my parents everything that was going on in my room. Like, I would organize my room and do something, or I would paint a picture and I would be like, hey, look at this, look what I did. And I think that the thing is that when your dominant function is extroverted feeling, when you feel joy, you want to share that joy. When you feel laughter, you want to share, or when you feel amused, you want to share laughter. We want to share the good vibes, and we want others to share that with us. One of my favorite things ever in the world is being able to see what my loved ones are passionate in and empower them on their journey. I feel secondhand happy for people all the time. And so the idea that it would be difficult for people to be secondhand happy for me is strange, because that's just my natural expression is wanting to share my feeling no matter what it is, because it's what matches the moment. So for an extroverted feeling dominant, it's not just that we want to share our joy and share our passion for something by expressing it in the extroverted realm. If we go into a room where it is not okay to share unpopular opinions, we're going to be a lot less likely to want to, you know, break up the vibe and say something. If we go to a funeral and everyone's crying, even if we don't know the person very well, we might find ourselves wanting to cry at that funeral because we feel the sadness. And Carl Jung refers to extroverted feeling as objective feeling, and that is because it is not based on the way that we subjectively are interpreting the feeling. We aren't doing much interpreting regarding the feeling. It is objective there. It's like, okay, this is a sad situation, therefore I'm sad. This is a happy, joyful situation, I'm happy and joyful. So we're looking at it at this macro level, and we can connect the dots and see how all of those feelings work together. And so since we don't really dwell on those emotions in the same way that NFPs might, it doesn't feel like that much for us to share something that we're excited about. Because if we're excited about something, we probably want to just you know, kind of ride that wave, and we like to exclaim about those things. We like to gush about things, and it's because we love when people gush to us. That is literally like what makes life so beautiful to me. Is I love listening to people like nerd out about something that they are very passionate about. And in my opinion, some of the worst people in the world, or like the worst thing that you could do to someone, is shut them down when they're gushing about something. And again, this kind of goes back into my whole experience. And the fear of being too much is that, you know, I was the sort of kid that performed in the talent show every single year. And I was made fun of for doing that. It was weird to do that. I would ask a lot of questions, and I would volunteer to do things. And, you know, I got shut down a lot. And, you know, extroverted feeling is focused on the vibes of everybody else, but also the way that we naturally express our feeling is extroverted. And so it is so difficult to shut up and sit down. And that is the thing, the message that I've gotten like almost all of my life is like, you ask too many questions, you are too loud, you talk too much, you have too much to say. And I felt really shamed for that. I felt shamed for wanting to share my joy with the world, share my passions with the world. And it's a rude awakening to realize that not everybody is as excited about that. And not everybody is as interested in hearing about other people and what makes them happy and what makes them come alive. To me, it's all about like, I want to come alive and I want other people to come alive. And that's the sort of energy I'm trying to spur. But, you know, over the years, starting in like middle school, I really started to hide myself. There were like a couple times I asked crushes out and they laughed at me, and that was like, oh, okay, I guess I can't express admiration for someone, because if I do, then they might you know, not like that, and so I better like pull back. So it's sort of like this journey of my natural self wants to come alive and bring other people alive. And over the years, as I've done that, I've gotten burned so many times that the tendency for so many ENFJs is to begin to try and dim their light because we don't think that anyone's going to accept it. And it hurts too much to share and give and then be burned. It's easier to just not belong and understand, oh, I don't belong, and then not even try. And so many of us end up so jaded. And, you know, there was a huge portion of both high school and college for me that I was extremely jaded, and I still am in many ways, but the more I process it and think about it, I really don't want to be jaded. Like, it does not feel natural for me to harden my heart. And so I intentionally try and continue to shift my mindset every time there is something, a reaction from someone that could have made me jaded and made me want to hide. Because we are a lot to emotionally handle, because it's not just our dominant extroverted feeling, but our tertiary extroverted sensing can be very intense, because extroverted sensing is all about directly engaging with the sensory physical world. And for us in the tertiary position, it's something that can be strong. We like to use it, but we are kind of haphazard with it. We kind of aren't really aware of the pitfalls that can happen, and we aren't really mature at using it. So for us, this could be that we don't even really realize how much space we're taking up, or that we don't realize how loud we're being, or we don't realize that other people might be viewing us talking about ourselves as like a power struggle. Because the thing is that ENFJs don't tend to really be aware of the power struggles that are going on, and we might accidentally be partaking in that, and we're completely unaware. Like, some of that could be like someone is sharing like, oh, I got to do this, or this is what I'm working on. And then an ENFJ might be like, oh my God, really? That's so awesome. That reminds me of something that I'm working on. And to my knowledge, ENFJs really are so oblivious when it comes to that. They don't even know that they're one-upping you, because they aren't even thinking about it in that way. They are thinking about it as, oh, we're just going back and forth, sharing our passion, and like, we don't mean to speak over someone or interrupt. Like, if an ENFJ was to know that they were doing that, we would feel so terrible. And you know, because we are so open about our feelings, then we don't really like to assume about other people's feelings if they're hidden. Like, if they aren't being very direct about them, we will just assume that you'll tell us if it was that big of a deal. So with our extroverted sensing, that could make us have this sort of exuberant quality depending on you know, what it is that we're talking about or excited about. And with NI as our auxiliary function, NI and SE together can kind of act as a catalyst for change, whereas SE is all about the change part, and NI is viewing the new reality. And so for us, we also can feel too much for other people, because the things that we're focusing on is one step ahead according to most people. Like, if I'm focused on the NI of the situation, then that chances are that hasn't happened yet. Like, I'm ahead of the curve a little bit. And so I'm in this world, this NI world, that feels very real to me, and I think that it makes total sense to want to anticipate these certain problems before they become problems. And to other people, they're just like, oh my goodness, you're overthinking it, just shut up, you know? And that can be very painful. So really, this phenomenon of the ENFJ feeling like they're too much, it happens over time. And that's why it's so important for us with dominant extroverted feeling to make sure that we are surrounded by people that are encouraging our joy. Because if we don't feel like we can share our joy, then we can feel extremely, extremely repressed. And it is absolutely painful to feel like we have to have a veil around our entire personality, or else we won't belong. And I think that for a lot of ENFJs, we may have overused our SE in the past. Perhaps we have childhood memories of times in which we completely took a risk that ended up leaving us really hurt. Whether that be in the romantic area, where you did something and you were rejected, and you were told that your love was too intense, or that like you needed to back off, and people were like weirded out by you. That's very, very common for ENFJs, and oftentimes it only has to happen once before we get, you know, so hurt and afraid to ever make the first move ever again. And with friendships too. I mean, I had a really good friend in middle school that told me that I wasn't popular enough to hang out with her anymore because I like didn't care that much about, you know, designer clothes or something. And even as a middle schooler, I was like, why do you care about that? Like, I'm, you know, interested in pursuing my passions. Like, I even had passions as a kid, and I'm realizing now that that's a little weird and not everybody had that. But I think that that's sort of the assumptions I make, is that everybody is just out trying to find the things that make them feel alive, find the people that make them feel alive, and feel like super passionate all the time. And not everybody really is, you know, playing that game, I guess. And so that can be confusing for us. And we can, I guess, a lot of us have these memories where we have used FE and SE to just gush about something. And we maybe came on too strong because we didn't really know how to yield that SE, and we maybe did something like really embarrassing. So that can make us afraid. And I think that for ENFJs, we tend to not really want to admit to ourselves that we're afraid, because we understand, like, in theory, that we shouldn't be feeling fear, we should be feeling love. And so why should we acknowledge that fear? Well, I think that if we recognize that fear, and we recognize that perhaps we were gushing to the wrong audience, then I think that we can give ourselves the energy, or we can motivate ourselves to use our SE in a different way. Use our SE in a way that is serving our FE. So what I mean by that is that ENFJs are only 2% of the population, I believe. We're quite rare. You hear a lot about INFJs and INTJs being rare, but for ENFJs and ENTJs as well, we are also very outnumbered, and we are like these awkward extroverts where we want to fit in, and the reality is that we don't really fit in. And for me, coming to terms with the fact that I probably am not going to fit in most, I guess, normal circles, it actually is very liberating to me. Now, I'm not saying, like, you'll never be able to find a place to belong in a, I guess, quote, normal way, but you are most likely going to be a little bit in counterculture. With NI, like, just the way that you see the world is quite different than others. And I think that if we don't develop our NI a little bit more, then we can trick ourselves into thinking that we need to belong in society as is. And really, if we can figure out our vision for how we want society to be, then you can find the people who are also wanting to change the world in that way, and then that's your little sub-unit of society. Like, you can find your people. And if you can use your SE to go out of your way to find your people, and use the energy to look and take action toward finding your people. Because if you're with the wrong people, then your SE is going to just come off in a really awkward, embarrassing way. And I believe that, you know, I believe that no ENFJ should feel like they're too much. And it breaks my heart to see, especially older ENFJs who have a hardened heart, and they are jaded, and it's common. It's very, very common. And a lot of people will question, well, are they even ENFJs? And they are. Like, you'd be surprised how chameleon-like ENFJs can be. And it breaks my heart to see us trying to fit in with the wrong crowds. And you know, we are natural leaders, we are natural visionaries. Like, I really believe that for most ENFJs, we are here to change the world and make it better, and not necessarily just accept it as is. With NI and SE, we really are not the type to want to just accept as is. So I think when we're young, like, our understanding of FE happiness, we see it in movies, we see it in maybe our parents or others, and we see this sort of lifestyle that we might want to live that would make us really happy. But the more our NI develops, it's like we realize we want more. We realize that we have a vision for life that is bigger than where we already are, or where we already are as a society. And so we find ourselves, quote, making things difficult and pushing on reality, because that's how our NE and SE does it. We see a vision that isn't there yet, and then our tertiary SE will push on society to try and get there, get to the new reality. And that's stressful, and you gotta have your people by your side. You cannot feel like you don't have a close-knit group that is honestly gassing you up, because you deserve to be gassed up, because that's what you do to others. So don't worry about it being like, don't worry about you being in a bubble, because you're never going to have the mentality of that bubble, because you're always going to be wondering with your FE about what other people outside of your bubble think. But if you don't have your close-knit circle that truly supports you and loves listening to you gush, then it's gonna be very hard to not be jaded. So hopefully that makes sense. If you are an ENFJ that has felt too much, my heart is with you. You're not too much. I encourage you to be yourself and, you know, share your passions and your gifts with the world, because with the right audience, you really can change lives. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you're interested in my group mentorship with extra videos, that is linked below. I do a workshop every month. The workshop I did in April is now available for purchase below. I also do typing sessions with Crystal. So all of those fun links are below. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your day.